Hello and welcome to this session. So in this session we are going to be discussing about Dhcp, which is a dynamic host configuration protocol. We are going to understand what is Dhcp and the role it plays in our networks. Now, in order for one to join a network or to basically surf the internet from a network, you basically have to have an IP address. It could be IP version 4, it could be IP version 6. And how do you get an IP address? There are two basic ways of assigning IP addresses to a host in a network or a client in a network. We can do it statically, where we go and assign an IP address to a client manually. We also configure the subnet mask, the DNS server, the default gateway. Okay, so you key in that type of information to your client and you statically assign that IP address to them. There's another way, which is the dynamic, and this is where Dhcp comes in, where you assign a server the role of assigning IP addresses to hosts joining a network. Okay, and that is where Dhcp comes in. Dhcp is simply a protocol or a service that enables or is responsible for assigning IP addresses to hosts in a network dynamically. Okay, and when you are configuring an IP Dhcp server, you basically configure the address pool, you configure the subnet mask, you configure the default gateway and the DNS server. And one question that one would ask themselves is, what happens if a DHCP server is not available on the network? Well, that host is going to have what we call an API address, which stands for Automatic Private IP version 4 Addressing Address, which is an address given to a host by itself if a DHCP server is not available on the network. And this is mostly on Windows computers. So if a Windows computer is waiting to join a network and does not discover any DHCP server, it's going to basically have what we call an API address if IP address assigning is set to dynamic mode. Okay, now when in Dhcp, remember I've talked about an address pool when you are configuring a Dhcp server. Leasing is involved. And what is leasing? Leasing of IPs means that if a host joins a network and needs to use the internet, now basically the host will receive an IP address from this address pool that we configured on the Dhcp server, and it's going to be given that IP address for a certain period of time. And basically, I think the Dhcp server checks twice if you're still using the IP address it has given to you before that lease time is over. And this lease time is meant to basically reserve IP addresses such that if a host joins a network and they use the IP address and they are no longer using it before the lease time is over, then that IP address has to be returned back to the address pool in order to enable another host who is joining the network to use the IP address and avoid the wastage of IP addresses on the network. So that is where leasing comes in, and that is the basic concept of leasing. Now, we have to understand that Dhcp is a 4-step negotiation process, and that is mainly in Dhcp version 4. And in IP version 4, we talked about unicast packets, broadcast packets, and broadcast packets. And the 4-step negotiation process in Dhcp version 4 is denoted by the acronym DORA. The first step, which is discover, is a broadcast packet by the client to the Dhcp server available in the network. Now, if a Dhcp server is available on the network and receives the discover packet or the discover broadcast packet, it replies with an offer unicast packet to the client with the IP address information saying that I have this IP address, would you like to use it? After sending after receiving the client, after the client receives the offer packet, it sends a request packet to the DHCP server, and it's basically a broadcast packet. Remember, we could have multiple DHCP servers in our network. Now, this is where the DHCP server now gives out the IP address that it advertised earlier on its offer packet to the clients in the network. And after sending it, it sends an acknowledgement unicast packet to the client saying that I have assigned this IP address to this host or client in the network. So that's the basic working of DHCP version 4. Let us look at DHCP version 6. DHCP version 6 generally uses ICMP messages sent via network discovery protocol. And remember, in IP version 6 we only have unicast, multicast and unicast packets. And what basically happens in DHCP version 6, the router, which is in most times our DHCP server in our network, sends out solicitation messages and router and advertisement messages. And solicitation is whereby a router sends a message asking for information about a network, okay, and advertisement is where it says I reside on this network, then tell a certain host either in another network or in the same network. And this happens repeatedly with the routers which form neighbor relationships, and they asks two routers which may be two different DHCP servers. They send these messages to basically ask who is in this network, okay, what information can I gather about this network, okay, and then the advertisement says I'm in this network, then tell a certain host in the network or another router that I reside on this network and this is my IP address. So that is basically it when it comes to DHCP version 6. Now let us talk about some attacks that we could launch on DHCP as a protocol or service that helps us assign IP addresses to hosts in our network. One, we could launch a rogue DHCP server, or this is what we call DHCP spoofing, where we set up a malicious DHCP server on the network, and this basically convinces the client that it is the default gateway of what network the client is in. So this is where I said the multiple DHCP servers can reside on one network, and basically it depends on how fast a DHCP server is able to receive the broadcast discover packet and complete the DHCP version 4 process. Okay, so that you can basically understand what I mean by a rogue DHCP server when I'm talking about multiple DHCP servers on one network. Okay, so one could be legit, the other one could be rogue, and they could offer IP addresses that are not legit, and this could lead to maybe tapping of whatever one or a client is using in the internet, going to look at logs and stuff like that. Okay, now there is what we call DHCP starvation attacks, and this is where you basically launch a server and you send so many broadcast discover packets that are responded to and are given to fake clients. So basically they are no clients, but you have assigned IP addresses to them. Okay, now this will this will basically prevent legit users in the network from attaining IP addresses. Therefore, now you can see where the starvation comes in. Legit users will not be able to use the network, since so many fake users have been assigned IP addresses and they don't necessarily need them. So that is basically it when it comes to DHCP starvation attacks. Now, there's a tool that one could use to launch this type of attack, the DHCP starvation attack, and it's called Yersinia, pre-installed in Kali Linux, I believe in some distros. And Yersinia uses DHCP discover packets to flood corporate servers, and therefore preventing legit users from using legit IP addresses. Okay, if you cannot connect to your network from work, it means you're not going to work, and that is basically going to hinder your output of productivity in that company or in that organization at large. Now, a mitigation technique for such kind of attacks is where we set up DHCP snooping, and this way we basically tell our devices to trust only certain networks, okay, joining certain networks. And then you can also set up port security, where you say you want to resolve only certain IP addresses, or you only want to assign IP addresses to certain MAC addresses. So I believe that's it when it comes to DHCP. Thank you for watching this, and see you in the next one.